And then I switched to a very high-fat diet. And what happened after that was that I leaned up incredibly. I got a six-pack doing no sit-ups whatsoever. This is a paleo diet, about 70% fat.
I'm exercising less, and I'm eating more, and I'm eating more fat and bacon. You'll never believe me.
And so they'd say the whole idea is you want to lose weight, you got to have less calories. Wrong. We know that's not true. There's so much research on it. The calories are very different.
Remove the carbs from the diet and you replace them with the one nutrient that doesn't stimulate insulin secretion, which is fat, you should get thinner. And lo and behold, we have like a 150-year history of very successful low-carbohydrate diet books that remove the carbohydrates and replace them with fat. I mean, going back to the 1860s. You know, just on that level, that's a pretty good reason to believe. And then, of course, this isn't, you don't have to take my word for it. Anyone could try it for themselves.
So, main causes of obesity, in addition to all the sugars and starches, are a low-fat diet.
A cheetah doesn't have to count as calories. A lion doesn't count as calories. They're in perfect metabolic and physical condition without even thinking about it. The same's true for us. The reason it seems like such hard work is we've become so far removed from the evolutionary dictates that made us what we were meant to be.
One way to increase the number of muscle cells is to make sure that you get adequate fat, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's not only that they can store fat inside them, but they're composed of it. So if you took a cell and cannibalized it completely, over half of the energy inside would be from fat in the cellular membranes. You know, the more saturated fat that you eat, the more your body is going to be able and eager to construct muscle.
These things that I think are great are people question, wait a minute, you're not hungry, isn't that a bad thing? Aren't you supposed to be hungry all the time? No, you're...
I am so stuffed I can barely move, how come I'm still hungry? Because your body is still somewhat smart and is trying to get in what it needs. So it is keeping you hungry, saying, excuse me, where's the fat?
Yeah, there's so many people that have a nutrient deficient life. Ugh. And it's really terrible.
Or sugar dependent or whatever.
Yeah.
Your moods are up and down. When I went to just all fats, basically, like, dude, I'm even. I'm like, wah, like all day long. I feel great even, and I don't have these horrific mood swings, you know?
And big.
And I found that as soon as I, you know, and it took being really committed to like eat blocks of cream cheese and like spoon feed butter, but I found that I felt craving less, one, which is really interesting. I needed to eat less. And I felt like I had rainbows shooting from my fingertips.
Really?
So it became a great way to kind of help my mood.
And so at lunch, I had a whole bunch of butter. I had about 3 tablespoons. And a few hours after lunch, I felt kind of calm and good, pleasant. I thought, well, that's interesting. Was it the butter?
But people that get off of Paxil, Zoloft, shit like that are like, I just feel more even all the time now that I eat a high level of fats all the time in my system.
But I found if I wanted to be bulletproof, I wanted to be at that point where my brain worked and I had all the focus and all the energy I wanted, and I didn't get fat like I used to be when I weighed 300 pounds.
You must have surely changed other things as well, though.
But it's not just mycotoxins. I eat 70% of my calories from healthy fats, mostly saturated. Right. Like, I mean, I've optimized every single thing I can.
He came to me after a few weeks and said, you know, it's great that I've taken 3 inches off my waist and I don't have to take my blood pressure medication anymore, but I don't really care about that. What I care about is that I have laser-like focus 24 hours a day.
And this gives you a source of energy that's independent of glucose. So if you're insulin resistant and you're depending upon glucose for energy, your energy is sabotaged. You're browned out. Instead of having 110 volts, your brain's living on 90 volts or 70 volts. It's going to affect how your brain works.
And that was how the study worked. You know, about 40 people signed up, and they were in one of 3 groups. They have butter on the special week, they have coconut oil on the special week, or they have neither on the special week. Anyway, the people on the butter week were distinctly better than on the control weeks, but the people in the 2 other groups were not. So this was definitely confirmation that butter makes you faster at arithmetic.
And then my daughter sat on Santa's lap for the first time in her life when she was 3, and Santa said, "What do you want what do you want for Christmas, little girl? And she says, I want my own stick of salted butter. And Santa looks at me like, huh? And I said, yes, yes. So he did say yes. And Christmas morning, she had her bike and she had her little cooking set, and she opened her Kerrygold butter, which is the Irish butter that's very available in the U.S., and she looks at it and she goes, yay! And she holds it above her head. She runs around the house like an Olympic torch, opens it up and takes a bite like a Snickers bar. Now, many listeners are going to be horrified by that. You know what I felt? I felt like, hallelujah. She did not want a damn Twinkie, right? She did not want Lucky Charms. She wanted something that directly affects her brain's ability to form what it's made out of. Your brain is made out of first water and then fat, nothing else. The lining of your nerves, the ones that you're so desperately working to grow when you're young, is made out of fat. You need that stuff. And kids on a high-fat diet don't get cavities, they thrive, and they behave better.
I call it Get Some Ice Cream.
That's what Keith was calling
Bulletproof
it.
ice cream.
It's a bulletproof recipe, but it's in my book, the Upgraded Chef book.
It's going to be on the menu.
And so here's how it works. You put like 9 egg yolks, not the egg whites, just the yolks. Like you can give the whites to someone who does low fat stuff, and then you put like chocolate and butter and coconut oil and MCT oil in there, so as much fat as you can fit in this ice cream. And you put it in the ice cream maker. You can put whatever sweetener you want in there, sugar, xylitol, whatever, honey, and you make the stuff, and it sends an environmental signal to both of you, but especially the woman. Her body is primed. All women have this if they're still fertile, and it says, if I'm in a world where there's enough raw materials to make a super healthy baby, I should go to the bedroom and make one. So you basically give this huge dose of amazing fats, which the body craves, and then what happens? You go to the bedroom an hour later. It's predictable and repeatable. I mean, Keith was saying it works, right?
Yeah,
he got like hundreds of people who try this. It's just
I'm
telling you, vodka versus Get Some Ice Cream, you're going to score more if you make this ice cream.
And their breath will be way.
For hormone balance, all of the sex hormones. So we have 3 estrogens: estrone, estriol, and estradiol. We have testosterone, we have progesterone, we have DHEA, we have pregnenolone, we have a whole bunch of what are looked at as sex hormones and precursors. They're all made from the same molecule, and the molecule is cholesterol.
A researcher in India noticed that in his area where people eat a lot of butter, alcoholics didn't get hepatitis and cirrhosis. And so he did a study with rats and fed them butter and lots of alcohol, and they didn't get hepatitis and cirrhosis.
Now, as you can see, the liver is made up of layers and layers of fat membranes. These membranes are almost entirely made of fat. Remember, this replaces itself every 8 weeks, which requires you to eat at least 10 pounds of good fat every 2 months in order to have enough fat just to replace your liver, not thinking about replacing all of the other cells in your body and replacing the brain, which is also almost completely fat.
I added to that 12 whole eggs and a quarter pound of butter. So at the beginning of that, I've actually got my labs in front of me. Interestingly enough, the number that's really important here is HDL. As you know, one of the key indicators for heart health, HDL. So it started off, it was 34, not really impressive. And after 90 days of eating a dozen whole eggs a day and a quarter pound of butter a day, it was 52, which is a lot closer to being outside of risk factor. Triglycerides were 200 at the beginning of the experiment. Where do you think it was at the end? Triglycerides are the indicator of fat in your blood, right?
Right.
I'm eating we're talking about, 40 times RDA. It's just ridiculous amounts of cholesterol. Mine went from 200 to 119. So that's the butter egg experiment. Probably the most horrifying experiment to my friends and family.
Butter, we've been told 1 million times that butter is bad for our circulatory system. Everybody apparently believes it. Okay. Well, for other reasons, before I started eating all the butter, I had what's called a heart scan or a computerized X-ray or whatever you want to call it. But it's a standard way of measuring the calcification of your circulatory system. And you get a score called the Agatston score, very, very standardized. And the top score I'd gotten before the butter is It's on the top. The score is about 38. If your score is 400, watch out. You're going to have a heart attack. But if your score is 38, that was about average for my age. Okay, fine. So a year goes by, and I'm eating butter every day for the year. And luckily for me, I'd done this. And so I could do it again and find out if my Agatston score had gotten a lot worse, as everyone would predict. Well, strangely enough, it had gotten better. My first score was about 38. My second score was 29. Anyway, that's very rare. There's data to show how rare this is, how rare the improvement.
And a nice little story about a man in his 80s who showed up in an ER, and he had sort of an obsessive compulsive issue where he would eat 20 plus eggs a day. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It's a New England Medical Journal article. And it turned out that this guy's HDL was nearly 100. So it's interesting that, that what I found was this showed me something that people in metabolic syndrome research know, and that is the more dietary cholesterol you consume, especially in these animal fats, the higher your HDL.
When we talk about a high-fat, low-carb eating strategy, or that you'll get better results from exercising less, it really does knock up against conventional wisdom. And so a lot of the scientific community will go, well, where are your published studies? And we can certainly give them the published studies that trickle down over time. But my basic response is, wait a minute, I have thousands of testimonials that are this long about every detail that these people did to lose 50 pounds or 75 pounds, or to get rid of their polycystic ovarian syndrome, or to get off their diabetes meds.
And I was told I needed very aggressive treatments of chemo and radiation, because if I did not, my cancer would be in my bones and in my vital organs in no time. And then I used my ketogenic diet on myself, and my cancer was gone after 2 weeks. When you don't eat, you have ketones in your urine, and you switch to burning fat instead of glucose. So everything was being linked again with cancer to the ketogenic diet.
Ketosis is, there's two kinds of fat burning mode in your body. And ketosis is where your liver is burning the fat and exporting what are called ketone fuels to the rest of your body. And the affinity of your body's tissues for them is about 10 times what it is for glucose. So if you take, let's say, a rodent with induced congestive heart failure and you inject them with ketone fuels, you'll see a 50% increase in heart ejection fraction in 30 minutes. That's how fast it is. And all of the tissues of the body, the liver, the kidney, the muscles, they all absorb these ketone fuels at a very, very high rate, very efficiently. And so when you're in ketosis, it's a very good way of handling issues like end-stage organ failure. But it's not used by our current medical system.
The animals were placed on what's called a ketogenic diet. High in proteins and especially fats, it stimulates the liver to make ketones.
The body has to switch from being primarily a glucose metabolizing machine to a fat and ketone metabolizing machine.
The ketogenic diet so completely corrected the kidney function of the diabetic mice that they were totally normal.
The degree of the change that we saw of the mice in the diet was simply amazing.
And talking about this cancer story, just a short time ago, I received word of a woman who had cancer of the salivary glands and was getting ready to have surgery, disfiguring surgery on her jaw.
Horrible.
She went on the ketogenic diet, and now she doesn't have to have the surgery.
And personally, I don't eat any white meat. I eat only the dark meat, because the white meat has less fat. A lot of people are eating the white meat because they want to eat less fat. And they're going to have all the various problems of people that eat less fat.
The biggest problem people have when starting this sort of thing is to really come to grips with the amount of fat that you're going to be eating. So I drink a whole can of coconut milk every single day. I don't just drink it straight. I pour it on fruits. I sip it. I put it in my coffee. I probably go through at least half a stick of butter a day. Dave Asprey turned me on to that with his Bulletproof coffee. I eat olives and avocados, and I cook greens and bacon grease. So getting up to 70% fat is going to be what's going to take you all the longest, because we've all been living in a fat-starved paradigm for so long.
And for people who've not had a lot of metabolic damage, it probably only takes 21 days to upregulate the genes that are really involved in effective and efficient fat metabolism, and kind of downregulate the gene systems that are involved in or requiring a regular input of carbohydrate. That's a fairly short-term transition.
If you don't want to look old before your time, do not go on a low-fat diet. The body uses fat to nourish all those cells.
My record so far is 24 hours of fasting and then a 6-hour bike ride with just water. But it was a remarkable experience to be able to sort of start to push the bounds of what the body can do if you truly allow it to access its own internal stores of fat.
But for those of us who are trying to prevent cancer, a moderate ketogenic diet has been proven to be very successful. I'm on that. I've had cancer and I don't want it coming back.
And this is an old medical text that I found. It's from 1944. And right in this medical text, it shows that our diets really should contain up to 65 or 75% fat. And back then, of course, that would have been animal fat.
Food is maybe the number one heaviest drug that anybody takes in the world. And we do it all the time without thinking about it. And I would just have you consider that if you think about it just a little bit, you can have a drastically different experience with life.
You know, I've been a sort of ultra-distance endurance person my whole life, and one of the things I've noticed is many people fail metabolically. They don't fail because their cardiovascular systems aren't robust enough to handle it. So, 7-8 hours into a swim, you'll get a lot of people who, sort of fall off a cliff. And it's because they're failing at a cellular level, they're failing at a metabolic level, they're failing at an oxidative level. They're not failing because their shoulders are too sore. They're not failing because their heart and lungs can't pump hard enough. And so it's that very particular athlete. And the same is true for the person who's running the marathon or doing these other things. There's a huge advantage to this.
And you know how I was saying in the story there are no side effects? There actually is one side effect of the ketogenic diet.
Makes you thin.
You lose weight. Yeah, you got it.